right. Hey, everybody. It's Suzanne, and I'm here for our next installment of Meet the Makers. Because of the times right now, we are doing this remotely. So you've got me sitting in the mothership in Bedford Center at our office, and with me, I have Greg Murphy joining us. He's a good friend, and he's somebody that I've met in my one of my networking groups, and he's been super helpful to me over the years. And I always talk about him with clients, and I thought it'd be a great chance for you guys to get to know him and introduce him and his very important service that he provides. So, Greg, you are an estate attorney with Concavagna. Did I say it right?
Cavanaugh.
Cavanaugh. Okay. Which is out of Boston, correct? But you're probably like most of us, and you're doing some remote and some in the city, or?
Yeah, right now we're going 2 days a week. Mondays and Tuesdays I'm in the office, and then the rest of the week I'm home here in Woburn.
Oh, nice. Yeah, there's some silver linings to this, like less commuting, and it's kind of nice to go 2 days in a row and just get the commute, out of the way. So that's awesome. So I was telling Greg, this is something I talk about with clients all the time, and we're in a trusted position, as is Greg, when somebody's dealing with something very personal, but that also really affects their bank account and their financials and their peace of mind as well. So I wanted just to talk to Greg about what he does, what his services are, and how the whole process works. Of you say the word estate, and some people don't even quite know what that means. So Greg, take us through, like, so say we have a client. They're a younger couple. Maybe they had their first baby, and now they're buying their first house, and I introduce them to you. Kind of take us through that process.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. People hear estate planning and they're not really sure what that means, or they think, well, I don't have an estate to plan, big enough to plan. And really what I do is to help clients deal with times of uncertainty, and that's really death and incapacity. And that could mean putting together an estate plan to address those particular times, or to work with families that have lost a loved one, to make sure that the plan that's in place is actually put into action. And it could mean different things for different people. But the general goals are to post-death administration as easy and efficient as possible, to minimize any estate or income taxes, and to get assets of the decedent off to their beneficiaries, people who they want to have those assets after they die.
And again, yeah, it's one of those kind of hard things to talk about, right? Because you want to say, oh, I'm young and I'm at the prime of my life, and but unfortunately, I'm sure we all know somebody that had something shocking happen to a loved one. So and what I try to explain to people is, if you don't put this in place and you don't have your wishes spelled out, somebody else, and it might be somebody in your family, or most likely again, I don't know this world, but when I hear of like someone going to probate, in the real estate side of things, right? So if there's a house and the owner passes away and they don't have a will, right? So they haven't left clear instructions as to what's going to happen to the asset. It can just get stuck in probate court for months and months. At least that's been my experience. So maybe take us through, like, if somebody doesn't have a will and they have a piece of real estate, for example, or other assets, kind of what does that look like?
Yeah, you're spot on, is that having something in place, not only to deal with your assets, but to name different individuals to serve in different roles, that's a huge time and effort saver. Having something in place, compared to if you don't have something in place. And I'll share sort of a story about a situation that I dealt with, where a couple didn't have an estate plan in place, and it got a little difficult to get through it, and it would have gone a lot more smoothly if they just had a basic will in place. It was a young couple that had purchased property together, and I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but they owned the house as tenants in common rather than as joint tenants. And they got married shortly after, and the spouse, the wife, ended up early, young. She was in her early 30s. And the husband eventually wanted to move on and went to sell the house. And the closing attorney looked at it and said, well, he doesn't own the house. He only owns half of the house. Mm-hmm. The other half is tied up in his wife's estate. And the wife didn't have a will. And so what we had to do is probate that asset. And at the time, the mass intestate statute kicked in, which said that her heirs were her parents. And so we had to go back to her parents and send them documentation as they were interested parties in her estate to eventually try to get her half of the house into the husband's name so that he could eventually sell it. And it all worked out. So the husband eventually got all of the house, all the interest in the house, but it certainly was difficult dealing with her parents and sort of bringing that back up a few years down the road. It was a tough situation, and just an example of how things can go poorly if
Absolutely. And I think about, when you're in that situation, whether it's a year or two after the event happened or shortly, right after, it's of course even worse. And, somebody's it's the last thing that you want to deal with. Right. And it can just get so messy. So,
I think people think they have an idea of what's going to happen after somebody passes away, especially with real estate. Common to assume, oh, we own it jointly. We live here. This is how it's gonna be distributed after someone passes away, especially when both mom and dad have passed away. And that's really not always the case. It's important to really look at the ownership of the house to make sure that what you think is going to happen actually does happen.
Exactly. Yeah. It's. I mean, I'm sure there's so many, unfortunate stories, and it could just kind of, makes a tough situation even worse, for sure. And what do you think?
I was just going to say, knowledge is power, and knowing what happens before that actually happens is a huge benefit to everybody involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Having that plan in place, that's huge. And I was going to say, I have some personal experience trying to sort out some of these things myself and my own family with kids. So are there other people in my boat where we sort of struggled with who we would name as, I'm not sure what you call them, like a guardian for our kids? And again, these are hard things to think about. So is that a common thing that we got really stuck on that, not sure who to ask, and are we going to be burdening people, and it's uncomfortable, right?
It is. They're tough topics to think about, but that's an important thing too, for those with young kids to name. There are really two roles now in Massachusetts. There's a guardian, and that person is responsible for sort of the legal custody and decision making for a minor child, and then there's a conservator who's responsible for holding assets for a minor child until they reach the age of majority. And a lot of folks do get stuck up on naming that particular person, whether it should be from one side of the family or the other. Maybe one spouse has strong opinions and the other has strong opinions as well. But I'd say, for the most part, it makes sense to name if you have someone in place in your documents that you want to serve in those roles. The court is going to defer to the parent who has those roles specified in their documents. If no one is named, then anybody could come forward and make the case that they're the best person to serve in that role. And the court really has no guidance from the deceased parent as to who that person should be. So having someone in place is always better than nothing. And The documents typically that we work with are changeable, and they're pretty easy to amend. And so, day one, it could be one person to serve in those roles, but a week later, a month later, a year later, it could be someone different, and it's pretty easy to update those documents rather than just sort of waiting until that right person comes along.
No, I love that was advice you gave me when we first started working together, and that was a huge change for me because I kind of thought like once you do this, it's set in stone, and that it's going to be like that forever. It's really hard to change it and whatnot. And when you said that, it made sense because the bottom line is, I mean, gosh, look at everything that's happened this year. I mean, things change, right? So the person that you were counting on, maybe they're having some trouble in their own life, or maybe they've had to leave the state for a job, and you don't want your kids to have to leave their school. Like, there's so many factors to consider. So this is great advice. And for somebody to start, so I guess couple last kind of quick things, but for somebody to start working with you, do you have a consult over the phone? Do you have a questionnaire? Like what's your process for working with people?
Yeah, usually I like to have sort of initial call with a client to just go over some of the basics about what an estate plan is and what it does and how it can help. And then I usually send them a questionnaire which has some personal information, some financial information, and that's really the piece that gets everything started. Once that document is complete, then we have follow-up calls to discuss exactly what the client wants to do. What they want to do with their assets, who they want to name in certain roles, and the planning that develops from there.
Awesome, very, very cool.
But it's a good one, just as you mentioned. Just having the documents in place on day one doesn't really solve the equation. The estate planning's it evolves as your life changes, as things happen to you that might affect your estate plan. So just having a will or trust in place doesn't necessarily mean you're covered for everything that happens to you down the road. It's like buying a house. You buy a house and you don't leave it as is. You're constantly changing it or updating it. You're dealing with issues that arise while you're living there, and so you're constantly changing, and an estate plan could change too as your life changes.
That's a great analogy. I love that. And I was thinking about that too. I mean, I imagine there's certain kind of life events that you would hope that your clients would pick up the phone and call you, right? So if you're like, all right, you bought a house, you sold a house, you had a huge windfall with, a buyout at your company, you have some more assets, you got married, you got divorced. I mean, I'm sure there's, you're really wanting to know all those things because everything's constantly in flow, and it will affect that. And that's why, again, I look at this as a good segue, and it's a great moment in time for our clients when it's like, okay, you bought the house or you just upgraded to the larger house, and now is a great time to reassess that. And we always joke here that normally when someone is having a real estate transaction, there's oftentimes a baby or a job change or a divorce, or there's something else monumental typically that's happening. So this is awesome. And then I guess two last kind of questions for you. One will be lighter and fun, but before we kind of get off this topic, what's the one piece of advice you could give to somebody? I mean, is it just like set a goal and get it done, put it on your New Year's resolutions, or what's a good way that people can just get tackle this and feel really good that they have this in place?
I'd say I think the one recommendation is to just not let it drop down toward the bottom of your to-do list.
Yeah.
And that often happens. Life gets in the way, and things are happening, and you're dealing with your day-to-day job and your kids and your families, and it might not be something that's front of mind because after you sign the documents, you don't really get anything tangible. You just, you get peace of mind, and that's really what we're trying to deliver. And sometimes that's, a hard thing for people to focus on because, just as you said earlier, they're thinking, nothing's going to happen to me, or I get everything figured out. And by letting it slip and dropping down on your to-do list, it just gets pushed away and not completed. And so, raising that up to to the top of the list, whether it be end of year planning or beginning of the year planning. It's always a good thing.
Yeah, we got them both right now, so you can close out 2020 and show it who's boss, or you could kick off 2021 on the right foot and just
Exactly.
good things. It feels so good when you know it's done and you have that peace of mind, and and I think of it as just a great legacy to leave for those coming behind you, that you kind of cared enough to not leave a mess for them, and they're very clear on what your wishes are. I think that's, I don't know. I try to talk to my parents, not ever to get morbid with them, but just to say, what's important to you, because I want to make sure that we're doing things in a way that is meaningful. So
that's key, Suzanne. Is that while you're alive, you can tell people what your wishes are, and you can document your wishes. When when you've passed on, you can't do that anymore. And so it's important to have the conversations now. Especially with parents that are maybe getting up in age, and it really provides a good legacy for them, just as you said.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it can help the family to be united too. Like, I've seen cases where someone passes away and there's multiple kids, and they each kind of have their own thing that they thought mom or dad wanted, and then they fight, and it's heartbreaking because there's so much other stress and anxiety going on. So this way, if it's like, nope, dad always said he wanted to be scattered at sea, it's like, okay, like, we know that was his wish, and then we feel good that we're able to follow through. And I'm pretty sure that's what my dad did say. Actually, I should probably double check with him, but he's a big sailor, so I think that probably would mean a lot to him. But he brought it up to me a couple months ago because he was having surgery, and I was like, Dad, I don't want to talk about it, but yet I did. Like, I was like, okay, thank you, I'm glad that you brought this up, and I should probably go back and redocument because I can't quite remember. But that's why he said he updated his whole estate plan with it too. So
perfect.
So that's good. That's good. That's what we all need to do. Awesome. So and you're are you from Boston area originally? I can't remember.
Jersey. So you'll see over my shoulder, we got New Jersey representing up top, and then over here, my wife is from Massachusetts. So we have both maps present.
That's why I was having this thing in my brain. So Yankees versus, I mean, should we even go there?
We could if you want. It's been pretty good for the Yanks last couple of years. They don't have any trophies to show for it, but they've been competitive.
Yeah. So is your house like a divided house?
Not really. So thankfully, my boys are both Yankee fans. I think my wife really doesn't care one way or the other. She was all in 2000 for the first year they won it, and then since then she doesn't really care.
Yeah, that was an exciting time, but yeah, it's been kind of downhill, like the last year or two. And what about football? Are you guys a football house?
So interestingly, I'm a Raider fan, which
interesting.
Pretty lean years recently. I liked Bo Jackson back in the day and just kind of stuck with it. So I've been tortured up here being a Pats fan, being surrounded by Pats fans for 20 years, and I'm just glad they're having maybe a down year this year.
Oh yeah, it's just a part. I think it's part of this whole weird year. Like, you can't stay on top forever and all that. But it's my dad's from New Jersey, so we always. I mean, he's been in Boston for probably 50 years now, but we always joke about all that kind of stuff too. And then my other question is, best Boston. Are you a beer drinker?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
What's the best best local, underrated, say besides Sam Adams, right? Like, being local, but what's I know there's some cool breweries around you. Is there like a favorite beer or favorite brewery in better times?
So Woburn is home to Lord Hobo. I don't know if you know that, but
yes.
The beers are pretty strong. A lot of IPAs. I think they've shifted away from that a little bit, but my pick would be Notch Brewery up in Salem. Notch Bills is one of my favorites. So that'd be my recommendation. It's drinkable whenever season it is. Winter, summer, spring, doesn't matter.
Awesome. A very versatile beer. I've not heard of this. So can you, during this kind of weird time, is it open? Can you have to call ahead and can you just go up there and get it, or?
No, they're in the stores. They're in a lot of stores. It's a silver and green can. I think they have a few different varieties, but my favorite is the, but it's a good drinkable beer.
That's awesome. I love it. And then last question, best underrated secret pizza shop in the greater Boston, or if maybe right in Woburn, or what's the best pizza?
Underrated pizza. See, it's tough being a New Jersey guy. We had places down there. In Woburn, I'd probably say our top right now is Pizza Market. That's our favorite. They have huge pies. I don't know if you call them pies up here, but
yeah, sure.
That's really our go-to.
Awesome. I'll have to try it. I actually have not tried that. I've not even heard of it. So thank you. And I never made it to Lord Hobo, but we always talked about going because they had the cool like outdoor food trucks and bring your dogs and all that. But I never made it. But I have had the beer before. It is good. And it's just fun to see how like all these local places are popping up, and hopefully it gets back to more normal in 2021. So thank you so much.
Bedford? What's the pizza shop in Bedford?
Oh geez. I mean, we have Ken's Deli right next door, and they have really, really good pizza. There's a place called Pizza Express that has really good pizza. We grew up on Steve's, which is the more Greek pizza, which I'll always love that too. And we have flatbread. So I mean, they're all so different, which is funny. But I would say Fiorella's next door in Concord has probably one of my favorite pizzas, and then my husband loves the upper crust in Lexington. So we cheat, we leave Bedford sometimes. Such a small little town. We love it though. Yeah, and you know what? One of my clients got me wicked or more Ryan, but I would get to enjoy it too. But into the Treehouse beers. You ever had their stuff?
I've had a few. Yeah, those are good.
So good. And he actually said it kind of was a cool upside of the stupid times we're in, is that you used to have to go wait in line, and people would wait for hours and hours to get it. And it's out. It's like more towards Worcester. But he said now the system, like you order it, you can pull up, you pop your trunk, they put it in. And it's really good. And I guess it's ironic because the clients I'm mentioning, they used to leave it off at our house. It was so nice, but they moved to the Cape, and now Treehouse just announced they're opening one down the Cape in Sandwich, right on this beautiful. I know the spot's right on this beach, so that'll be fun. So yeah, there's some cool stuff going on, cool stuff to look forward to. Hopefully, yeah. It's good. Well, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time and all your resources and being such an expert in what you do. I think it's a great thing for people to just do it, get it done, feel great, and sleep well at night. And that's it's a big thing. So I thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you next time, not on Zoom.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you doing this. Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get together soon and hang out and enjoy one of those beers.
Sounds good. Yes. I look forward to it. Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.